One question I did have for you guys is, how do you do a proper crossover? How do you get it where you have different characters, different stories, and then make them work together?
So one thing that's helped us is that, let's say you're reading the main storyline for Common America. If we introduce a Black Ops character, we cannot have the reader assume that they know who that character is. The character has to be introduced into the story in a way where it just seems like they're part of that world. And I remember that specifically from reading Marvel comics in the 90s. You would have Spider-Man, and he's just hanging around, and he's like, oh, I need to call up my friend the Hulk. And yes, it kind of was like this unnecessary exposition, but it was very necessary for a first time reader where you'd have like these caption boxes where it's like, and then Peter Parker called the mild mannered Bruce Banner, who most people might know better as the Incredible Hulk. When he gets angry, you don't want to see him or whatever. So you kind of had this idea of, okay,
Mm-hmm.
he lives in the superhero world. There's a good chance that he has other friends out there who are superheroes. Whatever. I don't need to know about all the melodrama that he has between himself and like Betty Brant. All I need to know is, okay, he's a dorky scientist, and when he gets mad, he turns into this like really big muscular guy. Okay, got it. So that's what we did with our first crossover with Common America and Black Ops. We introduced the Black Ops characters in the epilogue, but I don't think any of our readers from Common America ever contacted us and they're like, what? Who are these characters again? They were just like, oh, okay, cool. Like there's this other person and they know the scientist.
It's
That's
like,
neat. And then if
oh,
they
hey,
want
hey,
to,
there's this new villain. I wonder who they're going to be.
right, exactly. And so they pop out of the ether. Like, for example, Apex Moth is introduced at the end of volume 2. And when people see him, they're not like, who is this guy? It's more like, oh, who is this guy? He's a villain. Like, is he part of Carly's world? Is he part of Black Ops world? Because we put at the end, like, hey, it's going to be culminating in this crossover. But even our crossover that we did last year, we even told people you don't have to necessarily have read Black Ops. You don't have to necessarily read Common America. You just to have read one. And if you've read the one and you pick it up, everything else is filled in for you because it just seems like it's just part of that universe. I think the hardest one was definitely Soul Finder for the reasons we talked about. Was we had to do a lot more prep work in terms of this could potentially happen. We have to set it up, and then we spring the trap once we feel like the moment is right and we feel like everything has tessellated into the story that we need for it. But even then, for people who might have not read Soul Finder, it's going to be the same thing. If you've read Black Ops or Common America, you can pick up the summer crossover and we fill you in. We introduce Father Redder as if he was part of our universe, and we explain like, hey, here's your mission briefing. We're going to be joined by the Vatican's elite combat unit. We consider them combat exorcists. You can call them the Soul Finders. And there's not much else you need to know other than that. I will say real quick, it's kind of a shill, but interestingly enough, I do think this is Mark's best script. It is the first time that he's handed a script to me, and I had no edits to give back. And then we gave it to Doug Ernst, and he read it before our trip to Alabama, and he was like, I can't change anything. Like, this is like a perfect script as it is. So I'm very excited about this one. I'm almost done with it. I think I have only 13 pages left to go, but this one is, a lot of people, mileage might vary with volume 5 of Common America, but the crossover, that's the one that you're going to want to pick up.
Yes.
I think I'm very grateful that we waited 5 volumes into Black Ops before we did any sort of crossover with an outside property, because doing the crossovers between our two books, Black Ops and Common America, taught us a lot about how to do crossovers between two separate titles before we brought in, a truly outside title that was outside of our universe and IP owned by someone else, in this case, Doug Ernst. Because we script Black Ops and Common America in a way that if you only read Black Ops, you get the story. It all makes sense. You don't have to read Common America, and vice versa. I'd say that we have double the amount of Black Ops readers on Common America, and half those Common America readers probably don't read Black Ops. Black Ops is our second most popular title.
I started with Common America, and you're right. I bought Black Ops only after reading the crossover. That's true.
Yep. So you can read the Common America Omnibus that collects volumes 1 through 4 all by itself, and you may know that there are crossovers with Black Ops, but they don't affect the readability of that narrative. You'll be missing some little like bits of characterization and some little plot bits, but nothing vital. For instance, we're surprised that this went over so many people's heads, but our very first crossover was actually in Black Ops 3, which takes place between Common America 1 and 2. Misha plays a really big part in Black Ops 3. And part of Black Ops 3 is this telling the story of how Misha came to America after the events of Common America 1. But it was written in a way that if you're just reading Black Ops, all Misha is this pyrokinetic character who exists in the world of strange supernatural cryptids and already makes sense in that world. And if you're reading the Common America books, all the events of Black Ops 3 get whittled down to one little editor's notes in one panel where Misha says, like, getting here wasn't easy, but I'm glad I'm in America now. And then asterisk, like, see Black Ops 3. And a bunch of people didn't even notice that editor's note. But that was done in an organic way. And we had that kind of practice with all those issues of Black Ops and Common America, so that by the time we were doing the big Soul Finder crossover, it came down to, okay, well, we know how to introduce characters into Common America and Black Ops from the outside who no one may have ever even read a Soul Finder book before now. But when they leave this crossover, which is technically Black Ops 5, I think when they're going to really want to read Soul Finder, because Soul Finder is a great series, but it also gives you a taste of the kinds of stories that you'll read in Soul Finder, and hopefully it'll leave you wanting more. And we'll have copies of Soul Finder 1, 2, and 3 available at that point.